The complete works of Swami Vivekananda, the Vedanta in all its phases, addressed by Swami Vivekananda in Calcutta, Part 2. The sects that are at the present time in India came to be divided in general into the two great classes of dualists and monoists. The little differences which some of these sects insist upon, and upon the authority of which want to take new names as pure Advaitists or qualified Advaitists and so forth, do not matter much. As a classification, either they are dualists or monoists. And of their sects existing at the present time, some of them are not new, and others seem to be reproductions of the various ancient sects. The one class I would present by the life and philosophy of Ramanuja, and the other by Shankaracharya. Ramanuja is the leading dualistic philosopher of later India, whom all the other dualistic sects have followed directly or indirectly, both in the substance of their teaching and in the organization of their sects, even down to some of the most minute points of their organization. You will be astonished if you compare Ramanuja and his work with the other dualistic Vaishnava sects in India to see how much they resemble each other in organization, teaching, and method. There is the great southern preacher Madhava Muni, and following him our great Chaitanya of Bengal, who took up the philosophy of the Madhavas and preached it in Bengal. There are some other sects in the southern India as the qualified dualistic Shaivas. The Shaivas in most parts of India are Advaitists, except in some portions of southern India and in Ceylon. But they are only substitute Shiva for Vishnu, and the Ramanujists in every sense of the term except in the doctrine of the soul. The followers of Ramanuja hold that the soul is Anu, like a particle very small, and the followers of Shankaracharya hold that it is Vibhu, omnipresent. There have been several non-dualistic sects. It seems that there have been sects in ancient times which Shankaracharya's movement has entirely swallowed up and assimilated. You will find sometimes a fling at Shankaracharya himself in some of the commentaries, especially in that of the Vinaya Bhikshu, who, although an Advaitist, attempts to upset the Mayavada of Shankara. It seems there were schools who did not believe in this Mayavada, and they went so far as to call Shankara a crypto-Buddhist, Prachanya Bodha, and they thought this Mayavada was taken from the Buddhists and brought within the Vedantic fold. However that may be, in modern times the Advaitists have ranged themselves under Shankaracharya, and Shankaracharya and his disciples have been the great preachers of Advaita both in southern and in northern India. The influence of Shankaracharya did not penetrate much into our country of Bengal and in Kashmir and the Punjab. But in southern India, the Samarthas are all followers of Shankaracharya, and with Varanasi as the center, his influence is simply immense even in many parts of northern India. Now both Shankaracharya and Ramanuja laid aside all claim to originality. Ramanuja expressly tells us that he is only following the great commentary of the Bodhayana. Ancient teachers abridged that extensive commentary on the Brahma Sutras, which was composed by the Bhagwan Bodhayana. In accordance with their opinion, the words of the sutra are explained. That is what Ramanuja says at the beginning of his commentary, the Sri Bhashya. He takes it up and makes of it a Samkshepa, and that is what we have today. I myself have never had an opportunity of seeing this commentary of the Bodhayana, the late Swami Dayanand Saraswati wanted to reject every other commentary of the Vyas Sutras except that of Bodhayana. And although he never lost an opportunity of having a fling at Ramanuja, he himself could never produce the Bodhayana. I have sought for it all over India and never yet have been able to see it. But Ramanuja is very plain on the point, and he tells us that he is taking the ideas and sometimes the very passages out of Bodhayana and condensing them into the present Ramanuja Bhasha. It seems that Shankaracharya was also doing the same. There are a few places in his Bhasha which mention older commentaries, and when we know that his Guru and his Guru's Guru have been Vedantists of the same school as he, sometimes even more thorough, going bolder even than Shankara himself on certain points, it seems pretty plain that he also was not preaching anything very original, and that even in his Bhasha he himself had been doing the same work that Ramanuja did with Bodhayana. But from what Bhasha it cannot be discovered at the present time. All these darshanas that you have been ever seen or heard of are based upon Upanishadic authority. Whenever they want to quote a Shruti, they mean the Upanishads. They are always quoting the Upanishads. Following the Upanishads, there come other philosophies of India, but every one of them failed in getting that hold on India which the philosophy of Vyasa got. Although the philosophy of Vyasa, a development out of the older one, the Sankhya, busy with little things like species and genus and so forth, and that most cumbersome terminology which it is a life's work to study. As such, they were very busy with logic and left philosophy to the Vedantists. But every one of these Indian philosophic sects in the modern times has adopted the logical terminology of the Nyayanikas of Bengal. Jagdisha, Gadadhara and Shiromani are as well known as Nadia as in some of the cities in Malabar. But the philosophy of Vyasa, the Vyasa Sutras, is firm seated and has attained the permanence of that which it intended to the present or to men, the Brahman of the Vedantic side of philosophy. Reason was entirely subordinated to the Shrutis, and as Shankaracharya declares, Vyasa did not care to reason at all. His idea in writing the sutras was just to bring together and with one thread make a garland of the flowers of Vedantic texts. His sutras are admitted so far as they are subordinated to the authorities of the Upanishads and no further. And as I have said, all the sects of India now hold these Vyasa Sutras to be the great authority. And every new sect in India starts with a fresh commentary on the Vyasa Sutras according to its light. The difference between some of these commentators is sometimes very great. Sometimes the text torturing is quite disgusting. The Vyasa Sutras have got the place of authority, and no one can expect to find a sect in India until he can write a commentary on the Vyasa Sutras. Next in authority is the celebrated Gita. The great glory of Shankaracharya was his preaching of the Gita. It is one of the greatest works that this great man did among the many noble works in his noble life. The preaching of the Gita and writing the most beautiful commentary upon it. And he has been followed by all founders of the orthodox sects in India, each of whom has written a commentary on the Gita.